Despite what many people believe, when it comes to oil use, the United States is not self-sufficient. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, in 2020, America produced 18.4 million barrels of oil per day and consumed 18.12 million. But in the same year, the U.S. imported 7.86 million barrels of oil per day. So why would we import nearly 8 million barrels of oil per day when we already produce enough oil to satisfy our needs? I'll explain that on today's episode of Politics. What's up, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Politics. But today, I will not be reading 3 articles. I will be responding to a comment. To begin with, thanks for the comment. This is a great question. The question at hand is this one. Can we just drill our own gas like we were? Why are we importing it? This isn't cost effective. To begin to understand the question, we must start with a quick oil and gas 101. To begin with, the gas we put in our cars is not the same stuff that is pumped out of the ground in these drills. The gas in our car is a product of a refining process from this oil. But not all oil is the same. There are 3 different characteristics that define a type of oil. First is heavy oil versus light oil. There is real science behind the measurements, but all we need to know is that heavy oil cannot flow easily, while light oil can. Second is sweet oil versus sour oil. What makes an oil sour or sweet is the amount of sulfur content in that oil. And third is the TAN count of oil. TAN stands for total acid number and measures how corrosive an oil is. Here is a chart of the types of crude oil drilled around the world. Typically, the lighter and sweeter an oil is, the more expensive it will be, and the heavier and more sour an oil is, the less expensive it will be. Different types of crude oils require different refinery processes, so usually an oil refinery will build a refinery around a specific type of crude oil that it intends to buy. Now that we understand the different types of crude oil, we can begin to understand why we still import nearly 8 million barrels of crude oil a day. To put it simply, we have to import this oil because the oil that we drill in the U.S. is light and sweet, but our oil refineries are set up to refine heavy and sour oil. This is because the U.S. has not always produced enough crude oil to meet our own supply. Up until the fracking boom in the U.S., we had to rely on imports to meet our domestic demand. In the 90s and early 2000s, most of the oil we bought was a cheaper grade of crude oil. Because of this, our refineries here at home, according to Ryan Kellogg, a professor at the University of Chicago, spent billions of dollars on refining capacity that could refine heavy grades of oil. Once the U.S. fracking boom hit, we were finally able to drill enough oil to mathematically meet our demand. But our oil refineries had already invested billions of dollars in infrastructure that was meant to refine heavy oil. Back to the original comment. I agreed with this comment at first because it does make sense. But that cannot be the case because the oil we drill at home lacks the capacity to be refined at home. So why not invest in refineries that can refine our own light oil? Well, according to an article from Marketplace.com, the U.S. is refining more light and sweet oil than before, but just not enough to entirely switch over from heavy oil and stop importing it. And also, our oil companies are recording record profit. Without government intervention, these companies do not have much incentive to invest billions of dollars in new refining infrastructure when they are already making so much money. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this helped. Please comment your thoughts. I'm always open to a good argument.